Torrents of rain lashed against the hull of the Republic dropship as it tore down through Dxun's clouds, diving low to avoid fire from the Mandalorian anti-air emplacements. The guns roared to life anyway, spitting fire into the skies from deep in the dense jungles of the Demon Moon. One bolt tore up the dropship's port stabilizer, and the ship lurched, its guided descent becoming a tumble as the craft plummeted into the jungle, tearing through the gnarled trees and knotted vines before coming to rest in the mud below. Hello and welcome back to our latest series. Today, we're going to be looking back at another of the bloodiest battles in the history of the Star Wars galaxy, looking for insights into the soldiers who fought and died in them, with the goal of understanding the worst day of these beings' lives, and, in many cases, the last day of these beings' lives. In this video, we're going to be taking another look at the Mandalorian Wars, this time from the Republic side, and exploring another of its bloodiest battles, the Battle of Dxun. In 3964 BBY, after over a decade of preparation and campaigns in the remote Outer Rim, the Mandalorians invaded the Republic, marking the true beginning of the Mandalorian Wars. When this offensive began at Dxun, the fourth moon of the planet Onderon, where, unbeknownst to the Republic, the Mandalorians had an enclave. For decades, they had maintained a secret command center on the far side of the moon where neither the Republic nor the Onderonian authorities thought to look. This base had been established by Mandalore the Ultimate himself when he rallied the clans on Dxun after the end of the Great Sith War. In the decades since, the Mandalorians had sent their recruits to the moon to train, counting on Dxun's harsh environment to shape them into hardened warriors. Dxun was sometimes called the Demon Moon by the people of Onderon, and it wasn't hard to see why. The moon was covered in sprawling, treacherous jungles which were stiff with predators of all kinds, from swarms of voracious Canucks and Malras to fearsome Bomas, armored Zakegs, and the rulers of the Dxun jungle, the ferocious Drexel. Even the air on Dxun was hard to breathe, making every moment on the moon a struggle. The Onderonians avoided the moon at all costs, deeming just a short visit to be suicide. But the Mandalorians viewed Dxun as a challenge, one that would shape any who survived the jungle's perils into a warrior worthy of Mandalore. So the Mandalorians had made constant use of their fortress on Dxun's far side, and when the true Mandalorian Wars began, they began from Dxun, as Mandalorian basilisk riders fell from the Demon Moon in an invasion of Onderon, taking the planet in a matter of hours. Over the course of the next 2 years, the Mandalorians swept across the Republic, beating its military back at every turn. But then, the Jedi Knights Revan and Malak came along, leading an elite corps of rogue Jedi in joining the fight. They took command of the Republic military, and slowly, they began to beat the Mandalorians back. By 3961 BBY, a series of hard-won Republic victories had largely driven the Mandalorians out of the Republic's core territories. Revan's strategic genius had allowed the Republic to deal several serious blows to the Mandalorian clans, and the war had entered a stalemate. To break this stalemate and turn the tide of the war in the Republic's favor, Revan decided to target Dxun, committing many of his Jedi generals and a huge portion of Republic forces to taking the heavily fortified Jungle Moon. The Mandalorians dug in, moving a great portion of their armies to Dxun and daring the Republic to come in after them. Revan took the dare, concocting an elaborate plan to take the moon, consisting of thrusts and feints on 100 fronts, aimed toward grinding down the Mandalorian war machine. Revan's first move was to send in wings of dropships to deploy armies of battle droids in the jungle, which would take out the Mandalorians' anti-air guns to allow the rest of the army to land. But things didn't exactly go to plan. From the smoldering wreck of a downed dropship, Republic soldiers, clad in black and orange, scrambled up the muddy rim of the crater, their padded jumpsuits already scorched and caked in mud, their teardrop helmets cracked and dented. Sour-scented rain was coming down in torrents from the black clouds overhead. The sounds of thunder came from up above, and all around the crash site a similar sound could be heard, the deafening roar of the Mandalorian guns as they pumped shells and bolts of plasma into the sky. Another dropship was hit just as it broke through the clouds. Its whole starboard side immediately blossomed into flame, burning bright despite the downpour. The dropship, trailing a thick band of smoke, plummeted and slammed into the side of a mountain. The platoon of soldiers aboard immediately reduced to ash. At the crash site, the Republic soldiers scarcely had time to crawl out of the crater before they were under attack on all sides. But it wasn't just blue armored Mandalorians pouring out of the jungle, but monsters of all descriptions. Slender, cat-like Malras with long teeth and sharp claws, wrinkled, stalk-eyed, huge-mouthed Canucks, and even a few young Bomas, which roared as they charged through the underbrush, raising their thick tusks to the sky. The soldiers raised their blaster rifles and fired, cutting the beasts down with torrents of red light. But for every beast that fell, more streamed out of the jungles. Before long, they started to break the Republic's lines, and the real trouble began. Canucks bore down on overwhelmed soldiers, jaws agape and full of sharp teeth, biting at everything within reach. Malras pounced, their claws removing the eyes and tongues from their prey. The soldiers continued firing at anything that moved, felling as many of the beasts as they could, but before long, half the platoon had been dragged off into the jungles, some dead and some soon to be. Then, mercifully, the assault stopped. The survivors caught their breath, replaced the power packs on their blasters, patched up wounds and torn jumpsuits. They were far off course, deep in the uncharted jungles of the Demon Moon, with no clear route back to Republic lines. The ground shook and didn't stop shaking, and the sound of thunder, deafening and unceasing, echoed from all around, from the storm clouds above and the Mandalorian guns, still firing non-stop at the steady rain of Republic troop transports descending into the moon's atmosphere. Some of the Mando's anti-artillery batteries had been taken out by the battle droids, as Revan had planned, but not enough. Blast fire tore into the clearing, catching several Republic soldiers as they were distracted and spattering across the already scorched wreckage of the dropship. The surviving soldiers leapt back into the crater, scattering toward the cover of the wreckage as a squad of Mandalorians emerged from the jungle, their assault rifles roaring as the armored warriors remorselessly cut down their foes. Those who remained fired back from behind scraps of armor plate and from within hollowed out troop holes, each and all cursing their luck, cursing the war that brought them to this moon, and asking themselves the same question: where are those damn Jedi? The Battle of Dxun was one of the bloodiest battles in the entire history of the galaxy. The battle lasted for over a year, as the Mandalorians fought hard for every scrap of territory, fighting to the death to defend their bases on the moon's far side. The Republic suffered staggering casualties, not just to the Mandalorians themselves, but also to minefields, automated artillery, and other traps the Mandalorians had left in the jungle, as well as Dxun's ferocious wildlife. The Mandalorians suffered as well, losing a large part of their army in defending Dxun. The battle lasted for close to a year, seeing countless offensives and counteroffensives as the death toll rose to astronomical levels. The battle littered Dxun with craters, crash sites, and corpses, scattering debris all over the moon, much of which was promptly eaten by the Canucks, regardless of its nutritional value. In the end, the Republic won the battle. Revan's strategy worked, and in the end the Mandalorians were forced to abandon their headquarters, leaving only a few volunteers to stay and fight a suicidal and largely symbolic last skirmish. The Mandalorian bases on the moon were captured and destroyed, and countless Mandalorians were killed in the fighting. In their retreat, they were forced to abandon vast amounts of war material, depleting the strength of the clans even further. As Revan had hoped, the Battle of Dxun turned the tide of the war. It drove the Neo-Crusaders out of Republic space entirely, their armies greatly weakened and their fleet in tatters. The Republic, at long last, had the advantage in the Mandalorian Wars, but this came at a staggering cost. For every Mandalorian that the Jedi and their troops slew on Dxun, they paid with 10 Republic soldiers, to say nothing of Jedi casualties or the hordes of battle droids that had been destroyed. Even as Revan broke the back of the Mandalorian war machine, he broke the Republic's own forces in the process, reducing many ground units to quarter strength or below. The Republic fleet left Dxun in tatters, and many of the Jedi who fought on the moon were on the verge of falling to the dark side after the battle, utterly consumed by the horrors of war. The Battle of Dxun was a Pyrrhic victory, if it could even be called that, a bloodbath that spelled doom for both sides. That does it for this video. But what do you think? What do you think of this series so far? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.